Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Twisted Talks. I'm Josh, and this week I have Lorena with me again.
Hey!
So, this is part 2 of the Vampire of Sacramento case, or Richard Trenton Chase. So, we ended the first part with Beatrice and Richard Sr. deciding that, they didn't know what else they could do, so instead of committing him or anything reasonable like that, they put him into his own apartment alone. Great idea. But anyway, let's dive straight into how great of an idea that fucking was. So, since Chase had begun... I feel like I'm jumping in so fast. It hasn't even been a minute. Give the viewers time to listen and give myself time to breathe.
Stop and smell the roses, guys.
Yeah, me saying viewers, they can totally see me. It's listeners, Josh. Listeners.
True Man Show Part 2.
It's the ears. So, since Chase had begun living alone, he had become increasingly reclusive and socially distant. One of his most frequent outings were to a local rabbit farm at Rio Linda.
Oh, God.
Chase's apartment was full of rabbits, and he made sure to keep his apartment stocked up with rabbits. And if you're already thinking it, then yes, you would be right. He was keeping his apartment full of rabbits because they were his food. He was getting live rabbits to bring home, pinned to a table until it stopped struggling and was likely dead, and would then take his knife and cut the rabbit open. As the blood poured out, he would drink it before biting into the flesh and eating the viscera, or viscera is the soft internal organs. Yeah, however, that was not his preferred way. Yeah, we're getting fairly into it fairly fast, actually.
Yeah, we're diving in today.
However, that was not his preferred way to eat the rabbit. He would also blend the rabbit in a blender stained from all the rabbits that came before it. He didn't clean them.
No.
Chase would scoop the remaining blood and organs out of the rabbit, put them in a blender, and would drink them like a smoothie. Sometimes he would mix in some Coca-Cola to improve the taste.
Nice.
Because that'll do it.
Would you like some Coke with your rabbit?
Yeah, not even with your rabbit, with your blood and guts.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Like, even the countries where rabbit's a delicacy, that's not how you do it.
Rabbit in general, they're just too cute.
My stance on every animal but we move.
Yeah.
This isn't a vegan activist podcast. I won't get into it.
We're not going to get into it, girl. We're not going to get into it.
Otherwise there'll be a part 3 and 4. So there would be times where when Richard Sr. would call to see Chase, which was usually once a week, he would bring him groceries and they would play cards or chess. Richard Sr. didn't want Chase to become lonely as his friends never hung out with him anymore due to his weird behaviours.
Yeah, I can see why.
Understandably, they were probably kind of a little bit scared or like not knowing how to act.
Yeah.
So Richard Sr. noticed all the rabbits in cages when he arrived and asked Chase what he was doing with so many. Chase told the truth and said that he was eating them, but left out how he was eating them. It was a strange answer, but in comparison to other things Chase had said and done, it wasn't really alarming or anything. I guess after all, as I said, rabbit is a delicacy in some countries.
Yeah.
So Richard Sr., was likely just happy that his son was eating and taking care of himself, even if it wasn't in the most conventional way.
Yeah.
And he probably assumed that he was, killing the rabbits and like frying them or roasting them.
Yeah, it's kind of just one of those things,
that's
like at least he's eating something.
Yeah, probably assumed he was doing it in a normal way, following recipes from maybe, from maybe backgrounds that actually do cook rabbit. So when Richard Sr. visited again the following day, everything seemed normal, or as normal as it could be when it came to Chase. Yeah. However, when he came back later the same day, he saw that Chase's apartment door was wide open. As he got closer, he was suddenly hit by a foul smell. Now, he was used to the bad smell that his son carried, but it wasn't that. It was an overwhelming stench of blood and vomit.
Oh, no.
Richard Sr. rushed inside and found his son wearing only his underwear sitting on the couch. There was no colour in Chase's face. He was awfully pale, and all around him the place was covered in vomit. Richard Sr. had only seen him earlier in the day, so clearly something made Chase violently ill in a short space of time.
Yeah.
When his father asked him what was wrong, Chase told him he had bought a bad rabbit and got food poisoning when he tried to eat it. Concerned, Richard Sr. got Chase to his car, took him to the emergency room at Sacramento Community Clinic, and by the time Chase was admitted, he was in shock and getting worse. His vital signs showed that he was very sick, but not with food poisoning. The attending physician believed that the symptoms were more like that of blood poisoning and that he could be going into septic shock.
Oh my God.
The doctor told Chase that septic shock was not caused by ingesting any part of a diseased animal and that it would be much more likely to get sick from a dirty needle. The doctor noticed that Chase's skinny arms lacked the track marks that were often associated or seen on a drug addict. And Chase still insisted that it had to have been because of the rabbit. He claimed that the rabbit had eaten battery acid, so that when he ate the rabbit, the battery acid corroded the walls of his stomach and seeped into his flesh. First of all, even if that was true, why would you eat an animal that you know has just consumed battery acid?
Yeah, and how do you know?
Yeah.
And also, how are you picturing these things so vividly?
Do you know, like, these delusions are...
So fast, like.
So fast. This story, of course, made the doctor suspicious, as it would make anyone.
Yeah.
Chase requested to be moved to another ward as he feared contracting a disease from any of the other patients. He was so paranoid about contamination.
Yeah.
Even though he was eating rabbit guts out of a dirty blender. But anyway. Then Chase began to insist that his blood pressure was 0 because his blood was turning into dust. He also insisted that his circulatory system was not working anymore and was causing his body to fall apart.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
The doctor spoke to Chase's parents and learned about his extensive history of drug use with cannabis, LSD, narcotics and so on. It soon came to light that Chase didn't just drink the rabbit's blood, he was also injecting himself with it. He believed so strongly that his own blood supply was critically low, so he'd been attempting to replenish it with animals' blood.
Oh my God.
After running a few more tests on Chase's heart and lungs, the doctor's suspicions were confirmed. Chase was a paranoid schizophrenic who was also suffering from somatic delusions. Now, people with somatic delusions are completely convinced that there is something medically, physically, or biologically wrong with them, and their belief is so strong and sincere that they experience a range of symptoms that verify their worst fear.
Oh my God.
So, like, he was manifesting
He was
basically the
tricking
symptoms.
himself, like, yeah.
The delusions were making him also feel symptoms of what he was thinking was wrong with him.
That's such a big thing that you can, like, if you say, I have a pain in my head, you'll develop a pain in your head.
Do you know those
Your
kind of
brain
things? But
just
in
thinks
these
you have a pain in
cases,
your
it's
head.
really severe things like my body's falling apart, my blood's turning to powder, I don't have enough blood in my body, my circulatory system stopped, my heart stopped, all these things.
So scary.
And full on 110% believing it.
Yeah.
So... Once Chase had recovered from the blood poisoning, he was transferred to the psychiatric ward of the American River Hospital to be held for at least 14 days. Chase protested this. He claimed he was completely sane and that he just needed treatment for food poisoning. Chase was violent and unreasonable at being forced to do something he didn't want to do.
Right.
Standard. When he was told that the police or hospital staff would bring him back if he tried to leave the hospital, he wanted to speak to a lawyer.
He loves lawyers.
He does. Chase was admitted to the psychiatric ward on the 28th of April 1976, and 2 days later he attempted to run out the door. He was pursued by hospital staff who did manage to catch him, but Chase struggled so much and he managed to break free, but Chase was brought back the next day by his father.
Yeah. Finally, they have a bit of concern, like.
Yeah. The admitting physician at the American River Hospital, Dr. Frank Harper, noted that while Chase was openly hostile.
Openly hostile.
No, he was trying to escape the hospital. Openly hostile, that he was still oriented to time, place and person, which means he was still aware of the time, the date, the year, the season. He was still aware of where he was, and he was still aware of who he was and who other people were.
Yeah.
He complained about heart weakness, but hospital staff claimed he was almost completely non-verbal. So I suppose unless he was being hostile or complaining about symptoms that he felt that he had, he wasn't saying a thing.
Yeah.
It was obvious that Chase needed more intensive care than American River Hospital could give, and on the 19th of May 1976 he was transferred to Beverly Manor, a facility that specialises in mental health. Another doctor, Michael Buckley, wrote in his report that Chase had been entirely uncooperative with treatment and was again diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, because apparently the more diagnoses you get...
Yeah, like we've established this.
Like, it's like, is it not on his file? We know
this
already.
Yeah, we know, guys.
But I suppose multiple experts were confirming it, I suppose, maybe.
Yeah, like
but
second opinions and stuff like that.
When Chase arrived at the Beverly Manor, he was visibly nervous and he was still claiming that he was only there because of food poisoning. Chase continued to tell staff that he was sane and needed help for his physical symptoms instead, and that he could only be cured with blood.
Oh, God.
Chase declined to participate in any of the hospital's exercise classes or group therapy, and he continued to withdraw further and would not socialise with anyone. Slowly, Chase did end up beginning to open up and talk with other patients, and he began to take part in groups and started to play basketball with others. Doctors were hopeful that him socialising again was a sign of his condition getting better, and while the medication he was on was easing his hostility and paranoia, Chase still openly talked about how he liked consuming blood.
Okay.
His descriptions of how he would eat animals raw was disturbing to patients and staff, and these obsessions earned him the nickname Dracula.
Here we go.
And this is before he even murdered a person.
Oh my God. I actually didn't even think about that.
Yeah. One of the hospital housekeepers suspected that Chase was still killing animals somehow on the hospital grounds. During the housekeeper's rounds one day, when they were passing Chase's room, they noticed a headless corpse of 2 small birds on the floor.
Oh.
So they cautiously opened the door to check on Chase. Chase turned around, eyes wild and blood dripping from his mouth and down his chin, staining his shirt. And the housekeeper asked him what had happened, and he claimed to have cut himself shaving. I want to know why he had access to a razor blade, first of all.
Yeah, it's in a mental facility, like.
Just, like, how does that work? But anyway. That was not only... English, Josh. This was not the only time he had been caught killing birds. There were other instances, but I'm not going to get into them. You get the gist. He was still managing to kill birds and get blood while he was in the hospital. Or in the clinic, whatever you want to call it. The doctors realised that the antipsychotic medication they had prescribed him was proving to be ineffective. The very worst of his symptoms had not improved at all, and everyone was afraid of him. It was actually getting so bad that 2 nurses actually quit after having to work with him.
It would give you trauma, though. Like, it would give you actual PTSD. Like.
Yeah, I suppose, like, seeing someone that mentally unwell.
Yeah.
And obviously scared for your life as well.
As well as theirs.
What to do with Chase was still up in the air since his mental illness made it impossible for him to work. His parents would have to continue to support him. Richard Narver of the Sacramento Public Guardian's office decided that the best course of action would be for Chase's parents to be appointed as conservators. If any of you are familiar with the whole Britney Spears thing, you'll know exactly what that is.
Yeah.
For those of you who are not, this meant that Richard Sr. and Beatrice now had the authority to decide where Chase would live as well as manage his relationships and finances, essentially. Chase did not protest the conservatorship. After a few months, Chase's condition had improved, and by September of 1976, it was decided that he was finally well enough to be discharged. Chase's doctor believed that he had developed good socialisation skills, was thinking more clearly, and had gotten a more realistic perspective of his health issues during his time at Beverly Manor. However, the staff of Beverly Manor had a very different opinion. Once the staff heard that Chase was going to be released back in society, they made their stance on the matter known. The staff had dealt with Chase every day, and they knew he was not only still very sick, but he was likely a danger to others.
Yeah.
The staff claimed the only reason Chase was being discharged was due to the fact the facility was overcrowded. And if that was the reason, why in the name of God did they not release someone who wasn't such a high fucking risk?
Yeah, like, they could have left out somebody who was, like, maybe just a little bit less
delusional and, like, a danger to themselves or others.
Yeah, like, because I doubt everyone in there was that bad, like, do you know what I mean?
No, there had to be some people that, like, could have been...
Yeah.
I would assume. Yeah. Surely, like.
Surely. Honest to God.
Because, like, yeah, anyway. So, now, on the 29th of September 1976, ignoring the pleas of hospital staff, Chase was released back into the world again into his mother's custody. But Beatrice found an apartment for him to live in, and once again Chase was living alone. Chase spent
I can't fathom it.
Chase spent some time with his mother, but the majority of the time he spent alone at his apartment. Chase would get a disability check of just over $200, and this would pay for his rent and utilities. Excuse me. But his mother and father would cover, anything else that needed to be paid. But at least the disability check was covering some of the, the bits.
Yeah.
And I suppose because of the conservatorship anyway, they would have been in charge of where that money went.
Yeah.
So they were able to direct it onto the rent and utilities and things like that.
So that he actually couldn't use it.
So that he was contributing to something. So for the first time in a long time, Chase was actually easy to manage. And when in 1977 it was time for his parents to decide if they wanted to renew their conservatorship over him, due to Chase seemingly doing well, they decided it was not necessary to renew it.
Oh.
Which okay. So 27-year-old Chase was now independent again, no longer institutionalised or under any conservatorship, so he decided to travel across the country using money he had saved up from his welfare payments. Chase returned around 18 days later. Now, there is information about kind of where he went, but I didn't see the need for that because nothing kind of funky happened during that time, or nothing majorly concerning anyway. Chase returned 18 days later, and he'd gotten a new car, a Ford Ranchero.
Oh, nice.
Only Ranchero I'd ever have in my life is the pack of crisps, and I can't even eat them anymore because I think there's milk in them.
Hardly.
I think that there's milk in so many crisps, and like, what is the need?
What's the reason? Like, I'd understand if it was like a sour cream crisp.
Yeah, and even there's some sour cream ones I can get because there's no milk.
Yeah,
but most of the other ones all have milk.
Why?
I'm like, what is the reason?
What was the reason?
But anyway, moving on. Ford Ranchero, not the food. Chase stayed with his mother and sister briefly when he got back from his travelling, before moving back into the apartment complex he had previously lived in, but he just moved into a different apartment.
Yeah.
Beatrice still believed that Chase was doing well on his own. However, when she went to visit him again, she noticed the adverse effects of his schizophrenia medication. Now let's remember this was the 70s and many mental illnesses were not well understood and were more difficult to treat because of the fact there wasn't as much of an understanding there.
Yeah.
Now, while the medication eased Chase's aggression and his somatic delusions, which is the medical kind of delusions, it also decreased his energy and liveliness. Chase had become constantly sluggish and was described by Beatrice as zombie-like. And here comes yet another bad decision.
Oh no.
Beatrice decided that Chase would be fine without the medication and she weaned him off it. Can I see your degree in medicine and psychiatry, please, Beatrice?
Did we not learn from the rabbits?
No.
Did we not learn from the rabbits?
No. Do you know what I mean? And like, fair enough, I get it. There's nothing worse than being on a medication that's kind of making you down and depressed and not as lively and energetic.
But
to be fair, like, yeah, I've been on antidepressants before that have made me feel like that and I've come off them, but the difference is I wasn't like that when I'm off them.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
That's the thing, Nick. Oh my God.
Even myself, I feel like if I was enough in my right mind, I would refuse to come off them. Now, he probably wasn't. He was.
No, he definitely
we're not
wasn't,
on the same page.
Yeah, no.
We're not even in the same book.
Yeah.
But like, you know, like, if I knew that I could be that much of a danger to someone without my medication, you can be guaranteed I'd be taking that like religion.
Yeah. I'd rather be like a zombie than like
I'd rather be zombie and harmless to anyone.
Yeah.
Than living a life that's me going
absolutely
delusional and I'm trying to be careful with the words I use
Same,
here because I'm without being delusional and a danger to society. Yeah. Basically.
Yeah.
And I know like the delusion's not his fault, he's
and
mentally
not just
ill.
Society, to
but
yourself
like
as well,
to himself
like,
as well. Like injected himself with rabbit blood and gave himself blood poisoning and sepsis
like,
nearly.
It's one of the most dangerous things ever.
Yeah. So yeah, she weaned him off the meds. Chase seemed to be doing fine and he continued to attend appointments with his new doctor until he stopped attending after the second visit.
Oh.
Chase looked to be in good health until he became convinced that he was suffering from a blood clot in his brain that caused headaches.
Here we go again.
Here comes the somatic delusions because Beatrice thought he didn't need medication. Because Beatrice knows more than the mental health clinic.
Yeah, because she is qualified.
But anyway.
Slay Queen, PhD.
Now, I can understand, obviously, how it wouldn't be nice to see your child sluggish and stuff like that. But would you rather see your child slugging rabbit blood?
No, honestly, though. Like,
or being tired?
And having loads, like, no.
Anyway. So, he was still being sociable and meeting up with old friends from high school at a bowling alley until he started to rant and rave about UFOs and how a secret Nazi organisation had been after him since he was a teenager.
Oh my God.
More delusions. Chase had again begun to take illegal drugs. There were days where Chase would seem normal and would spend time with his father without making any outlandish health claims, but at other times he would do things that didn't make much sense, like subletting his apartment to strangers and later calling his father to chase the unwanted guests away. But anyway, by the next summer, Chase had begun to act more deranged than ever. I nearly said bless you, but I don't know what you say when someone coughs. Bless you anyway.
Yeah, actually. Thanks.
By the next summer, he began to act more deranged than ever before. Again, he began to torture the family dog, the same one whose snout he'd almost broken in the past.
Oh, the poor dog.
According to Chase's mother, Chase gained some sort of sick satisfaction from inflicting pain on the animal. During the summer of 1977, Chase killed both of the family dogs, and when confronted by his parents, he told them, "I had the right to do what I wanted to do," because the dogs belonged to him, apparently.
Oh my God, no.
Another evening, Beatrice heard a loud bang outside her door. This one's bad as well and a little tiny bit more graphic. Another evening, Beatrice heard a loud bang outside the door. At first, she attempted to ignore it, knowing it was likely Chase having some sort of episode or psychotic break. The knocks kept going and then she heard a gunshot.
Oh.
Beatrice went to check her front door and she saw her son covered in blood, in one hand a rifle and in the other he had Beatrice's cat held by the tail and dead. Chase had shot the cat through its head and the cat's brains were all over the porch. Chase threw the corpse of the cat onto the ground, got down onto his knees, flipped the cat onto its back and effortlessly tore the skin of its stomach open. Chase reached inside the cat and smeared its blood all over his face and shrieked. Beatrice, who was seeing all of this happening, was obviously scared and shut the door. Yeah. But like the power for a skinny person, the power as well it must take to rip a stomach open, and he made it look effortless. Like the description that was given, where in the resource I actually used for that part, said that he tore the cat open as if it was wet paper.
Oh my God. Oh my God. That's all I can say.
Yeah. So, Beatrice knew she could no longer handle Chase. Maybe she could have if she didn't take him off his meds, but anyhow. Yeah. Chase's paranoia got even worse and he stopped allowing his family into his apartment, as once again he believed they were trying to poison him. So like sometimes there was new delusions, but the old ones always came back as well. At some point, Chase shaved his head and went to the doctors, where he informed a nurse that he was fatigued, couldn't sleep, and wanted blood. Now, there was other resources I saw where he was convinced or something that the bones in his head were like moving apart and stuff like that. So I know the reason he shaved his head was so he could check the movements.
Yeah.
But I didn't actually put much of that in, but I definitely did see that somewhere.
This is not the plates of the earth. Like, we don't move.
Yeah, you know, it's your brain. Well, it's not your brain, it's your skull. It doesn't tend to move. And if it does, definitely get it checked.
Yeah, that's definitely not the way.
And as you'd expect, this request was denied, and he left the doctors or the clinic, whatever, without causing any problems. But he still did return, you know, several times, I suppose, saying the same thing.
Yeah.
In the apartment complex he lived in, one of his neighbours sometimes saw him walking around the complex, dragging one foot behind him with his mouth hanging open.
Okay.
Zombie vibes.
Interesting.
At one point he even entered his neighbour's apartment. This neighbour that saw him, he entered their apartment but left when he noticed other people inside.
Alright.
More than once, this same neighbour saw Chase bring cats and dogs into his apartment, even though the complex had a strict no pets rule, and these animals were never seen again.
Oh my god.
We can just imagine what that was for. Chase began to carry his gun with him everywhere. He would even just walk around the apartment complex with his rifle in his hand. And when other residents of the complex complained to the landlord, Chase was told just to keep the weapon covered with a blanket. Just keep the weapon covered.
Walk around with a gun on the blanket. Like.
Yeah, as if people don't know what's under the blanket.
Oh
But he
God.
did. He followed that instruction.
Pigs
he was
and
like, you know what?
No guns and blankets.
Yeah, guns and blankets. So yeah, then we move on to this section. My next little part. So in August of 1977, a call to the police was made to report about someone leaving their truck on the shore of the lake in Pyramid Lake, Nevada. So this is a different state.
Right.
So he went a bit out of his way here. The man was seen alone. Obviously, you're all going to know. I'm referring to him as the man until he actually says his name. But, like, you know, who's the case about? We know who it is. It's Richard Trenton Chase. I nearly forgot his last name, even though I've said it like 900 times. But anyway, the man was seen alone except for the company of a dog. It was strange for outsiders to be in that area because there was, like, a lot of... like, I think it was like Native American reservations in that area or something like that. Some sort of reservations in the area anyway. Yeah. So it was an area where you wouldn't commonly see outsiders.
Yeah.
So the fact that someone had like pulled up and their Jeep and left their truck there, it was sus. Like, because I know like some of you might be thinking, well, that sounds a bit dramatic to call the cops just because someone's gone for a walk. But I suppose it's just because that was very strange behaviour. Yeah. Because people didn't just go there. Yeah. That's what I read anyway. I'm not American. Officers began a search and found a silver 1966 Ford Ranchero stuck in the sand. The vehicle's license plate was expired and from Florida. I did not know your license plate could expire.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Until this case. But yeah, well, I'm sure obviously American listeners, you know, because you're American. Why am I being so obvious? But yeah, for those of you that didn't know, they can expire and you have to like renew them. Or something like that. And I don't know whether they like renew it so like, you know, you keep the same license plate, but when it's scanned by the cops or when the cops check it out in their systems, that it comes up as that it's valid. Because I highly doubt you have to physically change your license plate. That'd be a lot of work and a lot of, you know, updating for even the
But don't they
police.
have the little state logos on their license plates?
So I think you just need to, I don't know, pay your bills.
Refresh.
But anyway, yeah. So one of the officers opened the door of the vehicle and found a rifle and a semi-automatic rifle. Both guns were loaded and covered in blood, and beside the guns there was a pile of men's clothing and a pair of tennis shoes that were also stained with blood. Then the officer noticed a white bucket on the floor of the vehicle, and inside was an entire liver sitting in a pool of blood.
Lovely.
The liver was too small to belong to a small animal, and its size meant that it could have potentially been the liver of a human. With this discovery, it was even more important to find the person who had left the vehicle there. The officers scanned the area and they found a man about a mile south, sitting on a small rocky cliff. The man was completely naked and covered in blood.
What's new?
Scooby-Doo. Where are you? The man spotted the officers coming and he took off running, unfazed by the extremely hot sand that he was running on, bear in mind. Like, this is August in Nevada.
Oh my God, yeah. Oh my God. Right.
Now, of course, the officers were driving, so it wasn't long before they were able to take the man into custody. They caught up with him. The officers brought the man back to his truck. He had intentionally smeared blood across his face and chest. The man's hair was also matted and sticky from blood. He was also extremely thin and very pale. And then the man gave his name, Richard Trenton Chase. Mm. When Chase was asked where the blood was from, he claimed it was his, that it was seeping out of his skin and would not stop.
Oh, here.
The dog that was reported to have been with him when he left his truck was nowhere to be found. I hope it ran off, I really do. I had more of a chance running off anyway than being with him. Chase had a knife sheath on him, but the knife was missing.
Oh, no.
So Chase claimed he had only come to the area to look around and that he abandoned his truck when it got stuck in the sand. He claimed that he wasn't up to anything criminal. An officer asked him where the blood had really come from, and this time Chase claimed it was from a deer he had shot in Colorado in May, which was 3 months earlier, so that was obviously a lie.
Oh my God.
The officers had to take Chase in for questioning, and when he heard he was going to be taken to the, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, so forgive me if it's wrong, the Washoe County Jail in Reno, and he became hostile and aggressive when he was told that. Officers called the US Deputy Attorney, who ordered that Chase be arrested for federal gun law violations. Chase resisted to the point where he had to be restrained as they drove away with him. Chase's truck was impounded over the expired registration number.
Yeah.
He called his mother and told her there had been a mix-up with the police and that he'd only killed rabbits.
Oh, here.
A few days later, Chase's father drove to Nevada to take Chase home. After a few attempts, Chase managed to get his truck back by showing proof of ownership. 4 days later, lab tests came back on the liver and blood, and that was in the bucket, and the test showed that the liver and blood were belonged to a cow. So the US Deputy Attorney who had ordered Chase's arrest no longer wanted to prosecute, and all charges were dropped. Because I suppose it wasn't a human.
Yeah.
I think their main concern was in case
he actually murdered somebody.
So Chase went home to Sacramento. And now, to be honest, it's like the majority of this case has really been like the early adulthood, the childhood, all of that kind of information, the institutionalizations. Because when you get to the murders and stuff, which is what I'm about to go to, there isn't like, I haven't said a major amount. I've just kind of been concise because, given some of the murders, I don't want to get too graphic. And also, there is many resources, including some of the ones I was using, so you can check that out in the resources for this episode, where you can read a bit more into, like, the murder and, like, I suppose, read it as more of a story than as fact. Because, like, in some of the articles, they're a bit kind of, like, you know, the way it's laid out and the way it's put across is more like telling the story and just loads of information. And I'm like, I wanted to keep this concise because it's already been a big case.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I feel like, you know, when it comes to murder in any case, you don't want to go too crazy on the detail because someone lost their life.
Yeah.
So, anyway, moving on to the murder spree. On the 29th of December 1977, exactly 20 years before I was born to the day, but anyway, Chase was frustrated and alone as his mother had not allowed him to come home for Christmas. Chase later recalled that he was mad about that, and just mad in general, I suppose. 51-year-old Ambrose Griffin was helping his wife bring groceries into their home when he became the first victim of Chase. Chase was driving down the street that Griffin lived on, pulled out a .22 caliber pistol and shot Griffin in the chest. And that was only the beginning of his murderous spree. Now, I would also like to say, in terms of these killings, these are the known ones. Now, that's not saying that there was any more, but we can't rule out the possibility that there could have been more than what we know. But anyway. Then on the 23rd of January 1978, Chase went into the home of pregnant Teresa Wallen.
Oh, no.
He entered through the front door of the house as it was unlocked. Using the same gun that he had used to shoot Griffin, Chase shot Teresa 3 times, then stabbed her with a butcher knife, before cutting out her organs and drinking her blood. It's reported that he used a yogurt container as a cup. David Wallen, Teresa's husband, came home late that night to find her disemboweled. He started screaming and was still screaming when the neighbours rushed into the house to see what was going on and help. 2 days later, Chase bought 2 puppies, killed them, drank their blood, before discarding their corpses on a lawn near the home of Teresa and David.
Oh my God, like...
Chase later said during interrogation that an unlocked door was an invitation to him, and from the murder of Teresa and her unborn child onwards, all his victims had left their door unlocked.
Oh my God.
On the 27th of January 1978, only 4 days after the murder of pregnant Teresa Wallens, Chase entered the house of... This is brutal, by the way, guys, this one. Not that they all aren't, but it's just... you'll get what I mean. Chase entered the house of Evelyn Mirath, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that surname right, whose door was also unlocked. Inside the home were Evelyn's 6-year-old son Jason, 22-month-old nephew David Ferreira, and a friend called Dan Meredith. Sorry.
Oh my God.
Is it David Meredith, actually? No, Dan. Sorry, I did a typo there, but it is Dan Meredith anyway. Oh, me nearly fucking up the whole document. But anyway, Dan Meredith was murdered in the hallway, dead from a gunshot wound to the head, and Chase also stole his car keys. Evelyn and her 6-year-old son Jason were found in Evelyn's bedroom. Jason had been shot twice in the head. Evelyn had been partially cannibalized. Her stomach had been cut open and multiple organs were missing. There was also a failed attempt to remove one of her eyes, and her corpse had also been sodomized.
Oh my god. What's sodomized?
She was basically sexually assaulted anally.
Oh fuck.
Yeah, it's...
Oh my god.
Sodomized is anal sex. So, yeah, whether he did that while she was dead or alive, I'm not sure. I'm assuming maybe while she was dead. I don't know.
Not in a bad way, but hopefully.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? I get what you mean.
Do you get what I mean?
At least she didn't have to live through that if it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, obviously it's disrespectful to do it to a body, but like, at least she didn't have to experience, well, she'd already experienced being cut open and everything, so.
I know.
Unless he shot her dead first, like he did with Teresa before he, either way, the whole thing is awful.
No matter what way you think about it, like there's no way to put it that would even make it any bit better, like, it's just not a better situation.
22-month-old David, who Evelyn had been babysitting, was missing from the scene. The toddler's corpse was found months later behind a church and had been decapitated.
Oh my god.
What unfolded that night later came to light during Chase's trial. Chase had fled and taken the body of the toddler using David's car when someone knocked on the door of Evelyn's house. The visitor told a neighbour, who called the police, and authorities were able to identify Chase's prints in the blood of Evelyn. When the police searched Chase's apartments, they found all his utensils were stained with blood and there were human brains in his fridge. And obviously Richard Trenton Chase was arrested.
Oh my days.
Now, coming on to the next part, which is just kind of the trial and the aftermath. This is very short, and then we're kind of finished up, so some final thoughts, and then that'll be it. The trial of Richard Trenton Chase, or the Vampire of Sacramento, started on the 2nd of January and went on for 5 months. What year was that, though, Josh? Be specific, sir. But anyway, I'm assuming it was 1980, I want to say. But anyway, and it went on for 5 months. The defence attorneys rejected the suggested death penalty on the grounds that Chase was not guilty by reason of insanity. Now, usually in cases with the defence claiming not guilty by reason of insanity, I'm always on the fence on what to think.
Yeah.
But in this case, Chase was clearly extremely mentally unwell, was failed by institutions and his parents, and was most certainly insane.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, he still did what he did, but I can understand why someone like that should be institutionalised, not given the death penalty for...
Yeah.
Like, who knows, would any of this have happened had he been left on his medication?
That's the thing, like, it's not justifiable, but at the same time, he was wrong.
It's like, he still did what he did, but he did it because he was clinically insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. In the end, after the jury had deliberated for 5 hours, they sided with the prosecution, and Chase was found guilty on 6 counts of murder and sentenced to death by the gas chamber.
Fair enough.
So, you know, and I suppose as well, given the times, people probably weren't as lenient with mental health as they would be now.
That's the thing, yeah.
You know, so like the jurors would have been probably a lot less likely anyway to even consider a plea of insanity.
Yeah.
Because like, man was clearly insane. I don't know how anyone could say the otherwise.
No, there's
nothing
so wrong, like, do you know what I mean? There's no
like
way.
The somatic delusions were making him, you know, combined with the paranoid schizophrenia, were making him believe that he genuinely thought that he needed blood to live, I suppose, the same way we need to eat.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, could you imagine if you were eating and someone tried telling you, no, you can't eat to live? You'd be like, yes, that's what I have to do. So anyone that was telling him that he can't have blood to live, you're basically saying to him he was probably interpreting that as a go die.
It was so normal to him because that was what his head was telling him. Like.
Yeah, you know. So like institutions, his parents and his brain, they all failed him. Do you know what I mean? But obviously I'm not justifying what he did, but I can understand how he was insane. He was insane, and I can't.
No, I agree with you on that. Though I do agree with you on that. That like it's not a justifiable thing, but at the end of the day, he was just so wrong.
He was so far gone.
Yeah, he was pointing no return. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even when he was institutionalized the first time, they couldn't handle him because it was so bad.
Yeah, and then even the second time, because the first time he ran away, Beatrice wouldn't let him back in. Second time, they sent him to somewhere, even better.
That's what I meant.
Like, that was more, like, focused on it. And then,
And then that.
And then, yeah. So that's that. So in prison, Chase's fellow inmates were aware of his crimes, obviously, aware of the crimes he'd committed, and they were, I suppose, weary of him, kind of afraid of him. Yeah. And they encouraged him to kill himself.
Oh.
And in the end, Chase did kill himself. Chase had been offered anti-anxiety medication by the jail staff, so instead of taking them daily, he saved them up, hiding them until he had enough for a fatal overdose. Chase was found dead in his cell on the 26th of December 1980. And that is the case of Richard Trenton Chase, the Vampire of Sacramento.
It's quite sad when you think about it.
It's sad from every angle because, like I said, not justifying what he did, but the man was severely, severely mentally ill in a time where the kind of support he would have needed wasn't there. His mother was of no use. I get that in her mind she was probably doing what she thought was best.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. She was also had her moments and her moments where she kind of split from reality a bit and have delusions. So, not obviously to the same extent as Chase, but
at the same time, and then I suppose still there, like,
there was the abuse in the childhood. Everything was coming at him left, right, and centre. And then I suppose sometimes schizophrenia can just be genetics.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you're genetically prone to it. So could that be, like, maybe that's why his mother was having delusions sometimes?
Yeah.
While she might not have spiralled and gone really downhill or anything that we know of anyway.
Yeah.
Maybe she had a touch of it, if that's possible.
It's very possible,
you know,
I'd say. Like,
and then he got the full-on belt of full-on paranoid schizophrenia, like. Yeah. And then also had the somatic delusions. Like I said, imagine you need an antibiotic for an infection. And the doctor, and you know you need it. And the doctor's like... But the doctors won't give it to you.
Yeah.
Because they say because they're, even though antibiotics work, let's say the doctor's telling you, oh no, antibiotics aren't for that, even though you know they're for that, and you know you need it.
Yeah.
It's the same as when people were telling him he can't have blood. He was like, you're basically telling me I'm going to die.
Yeah. It's mad, like. It's mad.
And then in the end, he did kill himself.
Yeah.
He didn't even need to wait for his death by gas chamber. He did it.
I'm stunned.
It's an awful case all around for him growing up, living
people around him, like, as well.
Living a life following delusions and believing these things. Like, he must have been terrified all the time.
Yeah, and in that time...
And then what he was doing to other people...
Yeah.
Then you've got the outfall of being untreated and undiagnosed. Obviously, don't get me wrong, I know that everyone who has schizophrenia is not like that, just to clarify.
No,
there's people out there with paranoid schizophrenia. There's people out there with paranoid schizophrenia. There's people out there that are clinical psychopaths, clinical sociopaths, and they're all still putting the work in, and they're doing a treatment plan, or they're doing whatever they need to do for them, and they're contributing to society and living their life.
And a lot of them will have got diagnosed, though, in a good time frame. Do you know what I mean? That,
like, even me for getting my diagnosis, it took... When did I get diagnosed? Was I 23?
Yeah.
Even though I'd been in the mental health system since I was like 6.
Yeah.
And that was all through the government when I was 6 and up until an older age. I only got diagnosed at 23 because I found a private clinic and paid for it.
Oh my God.
You know, so like even nowadays, like, obviously, don't get me wrong, we've come a long way.
But at the same time,
there's still people screaming out for help, and the help isn't there.
There is so much more they could be doing. There is so much more, and I stand by that.
It's kind of a case of more information is known and more things are known, but getting the appointment to find out if you have it is impossible.
It's a fact. It's impossible.
And like, I was lucky because my stepdad lent me the money and I paid him back for the assessment. Otherwise, I would not have been getting assessed. But I wouldn't have been able to afford that. And most people aren't in a situation where they can borrow that much money.
The money to go private as well is another thing. Like, it's actually disgraceful how expensive it is. Like, it should be more open to people. There should be more facilities. There just should be more, like, full stop.
Yeah, or even, I actually saw a video, was it Mary Lou? Or was it someone else? I think it was Mary Lou in Sinn Féin and it all. And she was talking about the mental health crisis and things like that and all these other things. No, sorry, it wasn't about the mental health crisis. It was actually about, you know, like autism assessments and things like that.
Oh, I think I know.
Yeah, and she was saying, she was like, if these people have to go private, are you going to reimburse them?
No, honestly though, they need...
But they should be. You should be able to claim it back.
Even if it was like a 50% reimbursement, it would be better than nothing. Do you know what I mean?
But even like, I don't even give a shit. It should be 100% because at the end of the day, if they can't manage to get enough people to have in the HSE to do it, and don't get me wrong, I know the HSE is under pressure. Yeah. I'm not blaming the doctors, the psychiatrists. I'm blaming the system.
It's the system.
It's not the employee's problem. It's the employer's problem.
Yeah, that is a fact. That is a fact.
So, like, we've come so far, but we've still not come far enough, and the availability's not there. No. And so, like, for anyone who's, like, struggled or still struggling, you know, it's like, imagine, obviously not in a degrading way to how you're feeling, because I've been there.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, it's that hard now. So I can only imagine, from
How,
my experience,
like,
how hard
absolutely
it would have been
impossible.
from the 1950s to the 1970s,
Yeah.
or even in the early 2000s probably. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
People are still breaking through the stigma. It's still a work in progress.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, what he did was awful.
Awful.
What he did was awful, but it wasn't him.
That was not him. Like that. Like
It was delusions and
Yeah.
psychosis, and it was an illness.
Yeah.
Brutal. But with that said, obviously, thoughts and non-religious prayers go to, obviously, you know, friends, family. I know
Yeah.
it was a long time ago, but that doesn't change
still
anything.
doesn't,
Like, you know
yeah.
what I mean? Prayers for, like, thinking and love and light and all to everyone that was affected.
Mm.
And anyone that is ever affected by, you know, by mental health or anything like that. And just, it's just awful the way that the system can fail.
Yeah.
Even nowadays, let alone back then. But yeah, it's just, I don't know how to feel about this case, because anytime I kind of say about him feeling mentally ill and stuff like that, I don't want it to kind of come off as in like I'm justifying it, because what was
Yeah.
done was very wrong. But I feel like what was done was not him, it was the delusion.
Yeah.
It wasn't him as a person. Who knows who he could have been as a person if he wasn't a paranoid schizophrenic with somatic delusions.
And nobody really does.
Or if he
either.
was
Like,
medicated,
his mum didn't
or if there was
even
better
notice.
access at the time.
Do you know what I mean?
Do you know, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like his own family didn't even notice.
Yeah.
Like, and by the time they noticed, it was kind of like too late. And then even when it wasn't kind of too late and he was medicated and seemed to be doing okay living on his own,
They were like, okay, let's just
his mother weaned him off the medication.
straight back to the start.
Do you know? So, yeah. Any other thoughts on the matter?
I'm not going to sleep. But yeah.
Restless Night, XOX.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Girl.
it is a chunky case. It was much bigger than I was expecting it to
Yeah.
be. And I'm honestly I'm a little bit surprised I managed to get it covered in 2 cases. I think I've been talking a little bit faster than I normally would, because I'm a very fast
I want
talker.
to see some real speed.
Bitch. But I'm a very fast talker, so normally for the podcast I try to slow down a bit.
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I
sure.
want, no matter what country someone's listening in,
Yeah.
I want to make sure that they can understand me.
Yeah.
But I felt like there was so much in that, and I'm like, I didn't want to like end up making it more than 2 episodes, to be honest, because
I
my
get you,
intention
yeah.
was for it to be 1.
Yeah.
Until I ended up finding so much information that I didn't even know was there.
So much more, like, yeah. That's the thing, it's interesting, like, when you look into something and then you realise there's actually so much more to this than I
Yeah,
thought
because
there was, like.
I've heard this case covered by, you know, other podcasts
Yeah.
that I listen to. Like, I think Red Handed covered it at one point. That's one of my favourite ones. I think it was them that covered it, and I listened to it once. And they did a great job, and there was loads of information. But I remember when I first started looking information up, I was like, how did they find that much? And then I found, like, you know, a couple of books to use as a resource, as well as some websites as well. So that made
Yeah, because
much
I'd only
more
ever heard
information.
about it. Like, I'd only ever heard, and I knew virtually none of that. Like,
It's
you
just,
know?
it's a very disturbing
Mind-blowing.
and sad case.
Yeah.
For anyone and everyone involved, to be honest. But yeah, with that said, thank you for joining.
Thanks, guys. Come back.
Well, I was actually talking to you, saying thank you for joining.
Oh, here's me. Thanks, y'all. Thanks. No,
But also thanks to you for listening,
Yeah.
and joining in again. And we hope to see you next week. I have no idea what the episode's going to be or what the story is yet. But yeah, we'll get there.
yeah. I'll be back.
I'll be back. Don't touch
I'll
my
be back.
pizza. But yes, so yeah, guys, no, thanks very much. Love and light to all of you. Hope you're all doing great. Onwards and upwards. And given the topics mentioned in the case, if you ever need help, make sure to reach out. And, you know, even if it's hard to get the resources sometimes, all you can do is try. And I suppose try and get support from your friends and family in the meantime. You know,
Yeah.
I know the system can be broken sometimes, and it's not always very
There's
easy
always-
or supportive.
There'll
but just,
always be someone.
there'll always be someone who wants to help you, or, you know, try and be supportive. And yeah, love and light, guys. Mind yourselves, and that is it for this week. I am sweating. The car has gone so hot. But right, okay. Ciao, guys.
Bye.
Ciao. Where's the stop button?